Step into the darkness with Paranormal M, where every tale is a journey into the mysterious. Subscribe and ring the bell to join us for spine-tingling adventures. The unexplained is waiting for you. Guys, how do I get rid of this thing? The roommate who has the room next to me, Jay, has been hearing shit and seeing shit. Almost like maybe 2 months ago. I spent the weekend at my girlfriend's farmhouse, about 3 hours away. And while me and my girlfriend were spending the night, I heard something. Essentially, my girlfriend is asleep. I'm still awake, starting at the ceiling, or I'm assuming staring. I'm about to drift off when I hear a creepy, tiny voice say my girlfriend's name. My first thought is, well, at least it's not talking to me. And then it says my name and proceeds to say, I know you're awake. As scared as I am, I chalk this up to me having a very hyper-realistic nightmare. Close my eyes and try to ignore it. Fast forward to a few weeks later, my roommate reports she's been seeing stuff, like shadows and such. I wasn't too worried about it at the time, but it keeps getting worse. She recently reported hearing me talk when I'm not home. The first example was a few weeks ago. She texted me saying, "Hey, you home?" Which I responded, "No, I've been in class all day. Why, what's up?" She then informed me, "I just heard you knock on my door and call my name." Which, again, is scary as fuck because I was very much not home. Fast forward to today. Jay texts our roommate group chat and asks who's been refilling the water filter. I then respond that it couldn't have been me, just really not paying attention, and I'll be more attentive. Then she asks, "Hey, you're home right now, right?" And of course, no, I'm not. She then says, "Dude, I've been hearing your voice in your room. I've been hearing you all morning," which is creepy as fuck because I'm literally in class while I'm typing this. Some other things that have happened are Jay heard one of our mutual friends in the dorm. She texted asking, if so-and-so was at the dorm visiting. And he was not. I've never had that specific friend in the dorm ever. Another example is just what I've been experiencing. I hear just weird noises, like stuff moving around. And the other night, I couldn't sleep, so I went to the fridge to get a snack, and I heard someone pacing out in the hall. I went out and I checked, and no one was there. I also just hear random dragging noises or tapping. I'm always too paranoid to close my eyes for long periods of time. Anyways, so essentially, we think we have a mimic. How do I get rid of it? I'm not even scared, I'm just annoyed. I've tried cleansing with music, but that doesn't work. I also can't use incense or sage in the dorm because of the fire alarms. Seriously, is there some salt I can throw at it? I'm so tempted to just tell it to fuck off and tell it to just kill itself, but I figure talking to the spirit would just make it more attached. How do I get it to go away? Is paranormal activity genuinely real? I hope this question isn't offensive. I'm a genuine believer in paranormal activity and things adjacent to it. But my logical side can't help but to find explainable reasons. I also have psychosis. I was born with it. So many of my paranormal experiences have merely been hallucinations. So I may be a bit biased to my disorder. But as I've said, I am a big believer in it. I have a relative that can see spirits and ghosts. According to him, most are benevolent. Some are malevolent. I'm a spiritual person that is also, known of the effects of quote-unquote black magic and bizarre evil eye things, widely believed to be untrue. My great-grandfather had taken a freshly made lunchbox to My question pertains more to things like skinwalkers. I've heard countless stories. I'm an avid fan of no sleep, but in my point of view, so much of it can be explained by science. For example, with people hearing voices, ravens and other animals are impeccable mimickers, or sounds of screaming sound similar to bobcats. When it comes to hearing your voice being called randomly, I attribute it to auditory areodolia, or maybe another psychological symptom. Not to mention that the brain is great at seeing, hearing, or even feeling sensations that aren't present, especially in fear and the obvious hallucinations. I genuinely have come to ask. There's no amount of research that I can do that gives me a scientific answer. It's a paradox for me. On one hand, my logical side attributes these cases to science-related phenomena, while the other attributes them to my understanding of the paranormal and spiritual-related things. Possible doppelganger. So for some context, I, a 30-year-old female, work at a warehouse from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., and my commute is about 30 or 40 minutes depending on traffic. Usually after work I stop at a grocery store and get stuff for dinner or snacks for my kids. My brother is one of the managers in the morning shift. There's another 2 coworkers with him. At that time of the morning, they're working on produce, which is in the back part of the store. That's where there's a swing door with 2 large windows. So sometimes I'll tap on the window, say hi to them, and go about my day. About 3 months ago, I had to go on an LOA due to personal reasons. I was supposed to return to work a week ago, but my return to work paperwork is still pending. I never really told anyone at work that I was returning, since they're not the ones that deal with that. It's a whole different department that's in a different estate. Last night I got a message from a team leader telling me that she was reaching out to me to understand my intentions on returning back to work that's what they wrote. Thought it was weird because, to my understanding, they can't reach out to ask any questions if you're on a medical leave. I just texted her back that my paperwork was pending and that the department in charge would reach out to her. She said thank you and asked if I'd forgotten the doctor's paperwork. I was confused and I told her I'd reach out to the LOA department. I went to bed and at around 5 a.m. a coworker messaged me asking me why I left earlier. I thought that she had sent the message to the wrong person, so I ignored it and tried to go back to bed. 30 minutes after, my friend and coworker texted me saying, "Hey, I heard you'd come back to work, but left." I replied, "No, I haven't returned to work yet. Who told you?" At this time, I thought it was probably somebody that looked like me, but she replied with, "Anna told me she saw you were walking to the office." The thing is that we have to scan in a key to go in. Since I'm on LOA, even if I return to work, I wouldn't be able to use it for 2 weeks, which is the time it takes for them to have all my information in the system again. On Sundays, there's only 20 people compared to the 200 plus Monday through Friday, so everybody knows each other pretty well. I found out the reason the team leader messaged me was because she saw me go to the office and leave. The 2 other coworkers that messaged me thought they saw me too, but at a different time. And one of them saw me go to the office, looked around, head back to the parking lot. It was weird, but I convinced myself that maybe it was someone else. My brother texted me about an hour later asking me if I was just by the union table and asked me why I didn't say hi today. I told him that I was still lying down and that I wasn't back to work yet, so I wouldn't be there this early right now. He thought I was meeting with him since I told him I was returning to work last week, but I had forgotten I never told him about the delay. He told me that all 3 of them saw me by the union table, and that I just looked straight ahead and kept walking. He messaged me at 6:20, which is the It started with waking up in the middle of the night and just feeling scared. Scared to the point I would open up the Bible app on my phone and start reading and praying. Note, I've never felt like doing that before sleeping anywhere. I'm a Christian and I read the Bible and pray daily in that house. And that's with my grandma. We also watched church together on Sundays. Some weeks after that, I had a weird dream. I saw a face that had white paint on it with black around the eyes. I simultaneously felt my pillow being pulled from under my head, and then I instantly woke up. One day, we're sitting on the couch. One of my grandma's big fake plants just fell over with no one around it. My mom jokingly said, "Oh, you have a ghost here." I woke up with a large scratch mark on my throat and back. I don't have long or sharp fingernails or sleep with any of my pets. Out of the corner of my eye, I feel like I constantly see a shadow or something move in and out of my grandfather's old office. He pretty much stayed in all the time. There's a small wooden cross that's in the guest room I sleep in. I started put it on the pillow next to me while sleeping after these incidents occurred. I went to bed and I woke up with the cross still on the pillow. No one went into that guest room the entire day, and that night the small wooden cross that was not on the pillow was on the shelf clear across the room. I've heard weird knocking sounds coming from my grandma's closet. And more recently, when I was coming over and bringing in groceries, I heard something fall over that was loud. Didn't know what it was until I was washing my hands and realized my picture from my high school senior pictures that's in a frame on my grandma's counter was knocked over. No one was around when it was knocked over. I haven't told my grandma about any of this. It's because I don't want to scare her. I'm more so asking to see if what I'm feeling is real or just being dumb about it. I've tried to pray it away, but stuff keeps happening. And I don't believe in ghosts, but I do know that demons exist. I just can't understand how or why would be a presence in a place that has my safe haven, at least since I was a kid. And why it's starting recently all of a sudden when we both are Christians who routinely pray and do devotions openly and even watch church together. I didn't know that was a show. I don't want to be afraid every time I go there and spend the night, but now things are adding up seemingly. I just can't justify all of them being coincidences anymore. What I experience after setting a boundary with the spirit world. I know this isn't necessarily a spiritual community, but I wanted to share something that's been happening to me. As I've gone through my personal journey, I've developed an incredibly strong connection with my late grandmother. It's not just a feeling. She's with me constantly. I sense her presence, and at times I even hear her. But here's the thing. I don't think I fully realized that she had been with me my whole life until something happened that completely changed everything. One night I kept hearing knocking repeatedly. It wasn't just random sounds, it felt deliberate. I finally asked, "Is someone here?" And the second I did, I knew. I felt it in my entire body. I'd never been more scared in my life. I was completely frozen, unable to move, like my body just locked up in sheer terror. After a moment, I gathered myself and said out loud that I would be the only presence of beings. I would only allow the presence of beings aligned with my highest self. That anything else was not welcome. The moment I set the boundary, something wild happened. It was as if every single person I've ever known who had passed away moved through me one by one. It wasn't scary anymore, it was peaceful. I felt this overwhelming sense of closeness, like I was touching something beyond this world. It's hard to explain, but it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And that's when I realized my grandmother had been with me these connections to happen that I became fully aware of her constant presence. And since then, she's been with me at all times. Since then, I've had more moments like this. Deep, undeniable experiences that feel way too real to ignore. I'm curious if anyone else has gone through something similar. Have you ever had an encounter where you just knew you were in the presence of something from the beyond? And if so, how did you handle it? My uncle passed away almost 2 days ago. Some strange things have been taking place since. My uncle unfortunately passed away from liver cancer just under 2 days ago. Last night was the first night since his passing. At around 1 or 2 a.m., the power in our apartment went off. I ignored it. Tonight was the second night since his passing, and again, just before 1 a.m., the power in the apartment went off and then came back on again soon after. This rebooted the printer right next to my bed and startled me. This got me out of bed because I thought that it could have been him trying to communicate with me, or even perhaps let me know that he's still there. I'm not an expert or majorly interested in the paranormal, but I never rule anything out. I decided I would go to the living room where everything was still dark and silent to try and sense him. While I was walking to the living room, I got the strong smell of ammonium. This is important because, unfortunately, when somebody dies of liver cancer, they begin to smell very strongly of ammonium because it's no longer filtered like it would be in a normal person. I could smell this during the final days with my uncle, and was the smell of ammonium. I went into the living room, and at one point, when I stood in the middle, I had goosebumps all over my body, especially toward the back of my head. When I walked away from that spot, the goosebumps would gradually go away. I shed some tears, and I tried to say some words to him. I also asked him to send me another sign. A sign that it was really him, and that my mind wasn't playing tricks. At this point, I was a bit of a mess, and at a total loss as to what to do. So I lit a candle and played one of his favorite songs. The light of the candle flickered a huge amount, such that it was almost like having a strobe light in the house. However, I haven't seen what that candle is like when it was first lit before, so maybe this is something that it does every time. The other thing that happened was that there was a bunch of dogs outside that started barking, and apparently this is supposed to be a sign of some paranormal activity. However, I do live in a city known to have a lot of stray dogs. What do you all make of this? Do you think this is my uncle trying to communicate with me, or do you think my mind was just playing a trick on me? If this happens again tomorrow, what things can I do to try and communicate with him? If it's indeed him. I think something saved me. Okay, so I moved to this little mountain town for college when I was 17. I was extremely excited to leave my hometown as I had a pretty tumultuous high school experience. My roommate seemed pretty nice, but had a different upbringing than me. I was raised in an agnostic home, while our parents were very, very Catholic. Anyways, she went crazy the first week and went to countless parties. I was anxious by nature, so just took it easy while I tried to adjust living on my own for the first time. After the first month, she found a boyfriend. Let's call him Phil. I hated this guy. Phil was this weird 26-year-old dude who hung around the campus even though he, didn't even go to the school. They met at a party, and soon he was coming into our dorm on a nearly daily basis. Our room was tiny, so tiny that our beds were inches apart. I had so many mornings while I would wake up to see his ugly back inches from my face. I started to pull back from my roommate and tried to avoid my own dorm as much as possible. One day she asked me if I wanted to go out to get some food with her and Phil and a friend of his. I said yes, of course, because what college student says no to free food? So at 10 p.m. we're waiting outside for his pickup truck, and just before we go inside she lets me know that this is actually a double date with his friend that I've never met. I'm mad as hell. I should have walked off, but the promise of chicken wings and beer was just too enticing. Don't blame you. Since, well, she didn't know I was a lesbian and honestly it was too late to back out, I just follow her into the truck. Phil's friend Dave was a weird-ass guy. He was also 26 and kept trying to hold my hand. I was gonna say something, but I saw a shotgun on the floor of the truck. To someone who just moved from California, this was pretty jarring. Decided to just suck it up so I could get my free food and beer. We got our chicken wings. The guys had a case of beer, so we headed to the park. Or that's where, well, they said that we were going. Nope, we drove 20 minutes to the middle of nowhere through the woods to this open field. In the middle of this field, there was an old abandoned-looking house. Even my roommate was getting weirded out. I was staring at this house, and the sense of dread was washing over me. The closer we got, the more I could see this house. It looked like it was on its last legs. The house was made out of wood and looked burnt, and the windows were all cracked. Phil was telling us it was a haunted house and thought it'd be funny to scare us by taking us on a little ghost tour. My stomach was doing flips, and while everyone was talking to each other, I was still staring at the house. Suddenly I saw something move behind one of the windows. It was just a dark shadow. Then I saw two red glowing orbs. It blinked and I felt this feeling that I could only describe as being evil. My whole body felt numb. All I knew is that I should not go into that house. Thanks to my anxiety, I didn't have to fake throwing up. And thanks to my vindictiveness, I aimed for the shotgun on the floor. I was really playing it up, crying and holding my stomach, saying I needed to go home immediately because I must have gotten sick from the chicken wings. Phil was pissed. Dave was obviously grossed out that he had to sit next to this girl with vomit all over herself. But they did take us home. They wanted my roommate to stay with them, but I insisted that I needed her to care for me. When we got into the dorm, I exploded on my roommate. I told her that Dave was a creep for dating a 17-year-old, and, well, she shouldn't have tricked me into this weird double date. She was pretty pissed at me, saying that I wasn't her mom, blah, blah, blah. But I think she was taken aback when I yelled at her because I'm not a confrontational person at all. I begged for her to stop seeing Phil. Well, luckily, after I vomited all over his truck, he never contacted her again. She was still really mad at me, and I eventually switched rooms because we just couldn't get along after that one. I never spoke to her again after that. I left that college after the first year from unrelated reasons. I honestly just didn't like it. Moved to another city where I was closer to extended family. This was nearly a decade ago, but I've been having dreams about that thing I saw in the window lately. I keep seeing those red glowing eyes staring into me while I sleep, and this feeling of dread when I wake up. Out of curiosity, I googled Phil's name. That asshole is now on a sex offender registry. I get chills thinking about it. I don't know if he had had intentions with my roommate and I on that night, but I wonder about the creature I saw. I wonder if it was all in my head or just my brain warning me something was off. Was it some sort of entity telling me that something bad would happen if I went inside that house? Was it trying to protect me? Still can't decide if that thing was evil or not, but I'm weirdly grateful to it. I appreciated the vomit defense. I think I used to hear my deceased dog. Please try to debunk. So as you read, my family had to put my dog down in 2020. I grew up with him. My parents had him before they was very attached to both my mom and I. He would constantly follow us and wanted to be around us all the time. After he passed, which was during COVID, I noticed a few months later that I'd started hearing him around the house, specifically when I was alone. During COVID, I often left home alone since I had I had an online class and my parents were out working. The first time I heard him, it was the distinct sound of his collar jingling. His collar was really loud because it had quite a few tags on it, and it sounded like it came from right in front of me. Thought I was being delusional, so I went to my room, which was down the hall, to make sure his collar didn't fall, which I had on my shelf, and it hadn't moved at all. Thought maybe I just imagined it since I was still missing and thinking about him, but it kept happening every so often for 2 years straight. One time, I'm downstairs in the basement, home alone again, and I heard the sound of him walking on the floor above me, specifically how it sounds when a dog's nails click against a wooden floor. The sound went on for probably maybe 20 seconds. I literally ran upstairs because I thought maybe my mom came home, but again, I was alone. I heard his collar sounds until around 2022. My parents separated in 2020. Not long after he passed and my dad moved to a new house. I not once heard him at my dad's place, only at my mom's house. My mom moved houses in 2023, and I haven't heard from him since. And oh wait, there was only one time I did hear him when others were around me. I was at my mom's house, and her, my sister, and I were having a conversation at the dinner table. In the middle of my mom's sentence, I heard his collar so loudly that I was 100% sure that, well, they would have heard it too. I literally shushed her. I asked if they had heard it too. And I will say they most definitely thought I was crazy. I never mentioned it to them or anyone else again because I think my mom thought I was a schizophrenic. At this time, I had the collar at my dad's new house, and I don't know if I really heard him or not. Don't really have a logical explanation for hearing such a distinct sound over and over for 2 years in a row. I think I'm more, well, I guess you could say, in tune with the paranormal compared to my family. I used to see people a lot when I was young, which I clearly remember, and I've been repeating the same stories since I was young, and I've had a few experiences as I got older too, actually. So maybe I imagined this all. Maybe it really happened. I'm not sure. I'm open to everyone's opinions on what they think happened. It gave me comfort at the time to think that he was there with me. Even if there is a logical explanation for this, I'd like to imagine that he was there with me. Truly, my soul dog. Situations I can't explain. A close friend of mine lived in this house for years with his family. It was rented. When they eventually decided to move on, when they finally decided to move on, the mom disclosed to my mom that it was haunted. Both parents were skeptics previously. Weird shit went down over the years they were there, though. The grandfather is a carpenter. Put up a bookshelf. One night while they were eating it flew off the wall. Didn't drop, it flew. When the kids and wife were away visiting the other grandparents, the dad claimed he walked past the office and saw a little girl stood there. When they all went to a holiday, the neighbors pulled the mom to the side and asked, "What security system do you use?" The mom was baffled. "What do you mean?" "Well, the lights turn out at different times throughout the house. We thought you had something in place." Another friend of mine growing up again had parents who weren't the typical type to say they had ghosts in their house. When the kids were at school, the dad would hear people running up and down the stairs, asking his wife why the children hadn't gone to school. His son at one point asked for the bed that wasn't a bunk bed, as he didn't like the little girl that went underneath it, as he put it. My mom's very close friend growing up later, she hovered outside looking at her child at home. The owner came outside and asked what she was doing. After she explained, she was invited in. After getting the tour, the new owner said, "You might think I'm nuts saying this, but did you ever have an experience with a ghost here walking the landing?" She laughed and explained it was a friendly being. All three of these scare me because knowing all of them, I just don't see how they could be made up. My jewelry box is a portal to somewhere else. Back around 2018 or so, my mom bought me a standard jewelry box. I'm assuming from Amazon, but I never confirmed it. A plain two-tiered box made of cherry-stained wood. It's a timeless piece for myself, and I placed it in the lowest shelf on my bookshelf in the room. I had the jewelry box at least 6 years or so before anything started happening. And I want to preface this by saying no one goes in that jewelry box. I live alone in the US, and it's kept locked with a key as I have several precious heirlooms inside. One day I decided, hey, I'll clean this out and get rid of anything cheap or unused. I proceeded to do that while taking inventory of everything I kept and didn't. Every item in the box I'd been collecting over my life, so it was all familiar to me. Every item was in a designated spot and nothing was out of the ordinary. About a week later, I returned to the box while looking for a specific piece. I grabbed the key, unlocked the box, and upon opening found an Australian coin featuring Queen Victoria on the face and attached to a long, thin silver chain. It was lying on top of all my other jewelry. The chain stretched to its complete length across the other pieces. I froze, unsure of what this was, as I had a week prior. I completely cleaned out this box. Didn't own a piece similar by this by any means. Showed it to family and friends, asking them if they'd ever seen this necklace. Everybody said no. I half joked that I had a portal in my jewelry box. And someone out there, someone was just missing their necklace. I continued to wear the necklace thinking it might have been good luck, and thankfully nothing terrible has happened. Fast forward a year, maybe 2, no similar incidents occurring. I go back into my jewelry box, and there on the top of all the other pieces in the same fashion as the last was a heavy gold rope necklace. Again, I've never owned a necklace like this, but I've always wanted one. I put it on and wear it every day, and it doesn't tarnish. Friends, family, co-workers, they all compliment it. They even suggest I get it tested to see if it was real gold, which I do plan to do soon. This second instant mostly solidified in my mind and the possibility that there is some portal within my jewelry box. It doesn't bring me anything else but jewelry, which is the only consistent thing. I don't ask it for anything, but I am pleasantly surprised every time I acquire a new piece. I'm not sure what to make of this and wanted to share this with the community in hopes of finding some answers. Working in a morgue in the 90s. The following took place in approximately 1990. It was in a Southern California medical school morgue. I won't relate things in detail, as I can clearly still remember them as if it were yesterday. All the names of the principals in the story have been changed to protect their privacy, especially those of the decedent. The entrance to the main morgue office and laboratory is housed behind a solid, secure pair of double doors. These doors are often left open during work hours. But if no one's in the office, they're secured. As soon as you step through the threshold in front of you, about a yard away is a big blue shower curtain that conceals the room behind it. To the right is the office area that's somewhat cramped with 3 large desks and 1 huge filing cabinet. The extremely basic files of each case, their ID number and death certificate are initially kept in the file drawers until after the case has been used or moved on to its next location. To the left is a large storage area. It bodies as well as numerous shelves with specimens and supplies. As cliché as it may sound, the day of my sighting started out like any other. I was only one of the, I was rather the only one working on 3 separate cases that were all situated in their respective gurneys, and in their own level of the embalming process. I've been working on the cases for approximately 3 hours, without interruption from any of my coworkers. I think it's safe to say that I was very absorbed in my work on that particular day. It was getting close to lunch, and I decided to wash up and head to the office to take my lunch. As I passed by the door to the room that held the 3 large vertical refrigerators and the row upon row of already embalmed bodies, I looked to my right, clearly saw a full-sized apparition. I froze in my footsteps like a character in a cartoon. Looked to my right further to see an older man standing in front of the closet vertical refrigerator. He was simply standing there. I could see through him, but at the same time clearly identified as a person. As I stood there, I just looked for what seemed like minutes. It was probably only seconds. The apparition turned and looked at me and simply faded away and disappeared, almost like cigarette smoke dissipates into its environment. I continued to look in that direction, dumbfounded. It wasn't scary in the least, but almost comforting, as if it was completely natural and an everyday occurrence. I merely went into the office and saw my coworker William and exclaimed, "You won't believe what I just saw." He was completely unfazed and looked at me. He said that you saw a ghost. I was more taken aback by his knowing what I'd seen that I had truly seen. He went on to tell me that he has seen quite often and enjoys the interaction when it does happen. When we told our coworker Joe what I saw, they were completely taken aback, scared, and frantic. I tried to explain the quote-unquote visit as more of a comforting interaction. At least more so than one like, a typical Hollywood haunting. But that offered little comfort, and the rest of the day was rather off-kilter. One of the other employees that worked for the morgue office and a paperwork capacity exclusively was Lola. She worked way down the hall, away from the actual work facilities. She was basically responsible for processing every piece of paperwork that needed to be dealt with through her office. She was a petite, insightful lady who believed strongly in spirited events that involve interactions with the deceased. She would often attend seance-like events with friends, and has reported successful contacts. She had plans to attend one of her spiritual meetings. The following day, she would bring it up to the group in attendance. We all kind of thought that was kind of neat, but really shrugged it off and didn't think of her involvement in the situation again. That was until 3 days later, when she came to speak to us about what she had come across. Apparently, her group leader during their seance-like meeting reached out inquiring as to the desire of the apparition to appear before me. The group leader received the sense that the apparition was just somewhat confused and didn't quite know where to go. This theme continued during the meeting, with the sons of the apparition just being uncomfortable and lacking direction. The other extremely noteworthy feeling the group leader came across was the letter W constantly appearing before her. It was as if the whole meeting and interaction with the apparition revolved around the level of confusion and the letter W over and over again. Everyone's curiosity was spiked by what Lola had to say, me especially. We all then walked over to where I saw the apparition. I explained to everybody what I saw and where I saw it. That's when things got a little bit eerie. I don't recall who noticed it, but in one of the refrigerators directly in front of where I saw the apparition was a name tag and a label. The tag said William Wood. There's no doubt in my mind as to what I saw that day. And reflecting back upon it, I believe my conscious level of thinking was down while my subconscious level was up. Having been level of relaxation or openness, so to speak. Is this paranormal? I think I experienced something paranormal. My pawpaw died a few years ago. Overdosed after my dad got arrested. He had a ton of random stuff, but all of us grandkids got some of it. I have quite a bit of random things from him, including this old car piggy bank that has a music box in it. He used to keep it in my cabinet on display. One day, a random day, I took it out to show a friend and I spun the key so it would play music. After it finished, I put it back into my cabinet. Hours pass and it's now night. I'm lying in bed watching TV when the music box dinged. It was just one ding. I know music boxes can sometimes play a note or two even after the song, but I felt it way too long after that. Or rather, it. Not to mention, nobody else touched it after I put it into the cabinet. I told my aunt about it, who I lived with at the time, and she was entirely convincing that it was my pawpaw. My aunt has this old clock that used to sit in this mantel. It's broken, doesn't work, but she says on occasion the clock hands will move. And there have been other things that have happened in that house as well. One night while me and my uncle were out, they were out, rather, I suppose. Let's figure this out. One night while me and my uncle were out, my aunt said some crazy shit happened to her. For a bit of context here, I always wear a lanyard with keys on it. And I'm really quiet and I tend to startle my family. When I run up and down the stairs, my keys jingle a lot. My aunt said she was walking around upstairs when she heard this country song playing. Something about being watched. She said she only heard it in one specific spot. She also said she heard my keys jangling, despite me not even being home, and having my keys on me. She also said she heard the garage door open, those large rolling doors, and the garage light turned on. When we got home, the light was in fact on, and she was so terrified we had to search the house. There was nobody and all the doors were locked. She has this theory that the house is haunted by an old man. She knows mine and my cousin's room were his workshop. We built the 2 rooms and there was one when we moved in. She says he's very similar to her grandpa, not a harmful spirit, just to protect her in a way. Does anyone have any opinions on this or what it sounds like? Can this all be explained or is it paranormal? Blue light. This occurred about 4 years ago. I had just had a bad episode of withdrawals from opiates, and while the worst was over, I still had not slept in roughly 5 days. I finally took 50 milligrams of Benadryl to try and induce sleep. Red flag. Now, I've done the awful deep pH trip when younger out of desperation, which involves consuming at least 200 milligrams plus, at least 4 to 10 times the recommended dose. And it's an awful experience where not only can you badly move, all you get is subtle auditory hallucinations and shadows, most looking like spiders crawling and jumping around. Meanwhile, you feel so shitty and doing anything is a chore. Anyway, to get back on track, as the 50 milligrams of Benadryl kicked in, I was laying in bed with the lights on, and the door cracked. Very gently, as if, not wanting to... Very gently, as if to not want to starts me. A very vivid blue light in the shape of a ribbon slithered like a snake at the top of the ceiling, making its way toward me. I remember I felt this intense relaxation overcoming me. I felt so serene and at peace. I was already emotionally a wreck as I felt so much of my life had been spent the needle. At no time did I start... At no time did I feel startled, right? As the blue snake-shaped light grew closer until it was just above my head and circling around near the ceiling. I recall thinking, I'm never gonna forget this. Now I've experimented with every psychedelic to the extreme and never witnessed something so vivid while being so lucid. This was definitely not sleep deprivation. I have minor hallucinations, but nothing like this. Also, it was how calm and at peace I felt. Circled above my head, and that's the last I recall before finally falling asleep. Personally, I'm a total skeptic, but this is the one event in my life I cannot explain. My experience with shadow people. 1. A few years ago, I was sleeping with my girlfriend at the time. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up and saw a shadowy figure sitting next to me. I didn't give it much thought. I assumed it was my girlfriend sitting up because she couldn't sleep or something. I tried to hug her, but my arm just fell through empty air. And that's when I realized my girlfriend was still lying next to me, fast asleep. I didn't think much of it. I assumed I was just tripping and went back to sleep. That was until my girlfriend told me about her dream in the morning. She dreamed of something sitting on her and choking her. 2. At my cousin's birthday, I told my aunt about something that happened at my grandparents' house when I was around 5 or 6. It was during a family gathering that lasted late into the night. Eventually, my parents and I got tired and went into the room to sleep. I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. I've always been a light sleeper. Every little sound would just keep me awake, and that night I could still hear people talking and laughing from the other room. At some point, I saw the door slowly creak open. Thought it was just someone passing through. My grandparents' house had this weird layout where you go through one room, get to the other one, and instead of somebody walking by, a dark, shadowy figure stepped into the doorway. Stopped next to our bed completely still, just standing there. I stared, frozen, thinking maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. And then it opened its eyes, bright, unnatural white, and stretched into this wide grin too big for its face. My aunt listened to my story without a surprise. She said that she expected something like that to happen in that house. It was normal to hear someone snoring at night even when everyone was awake. The sound would drift through the walls as if someone was sleeping just out of sight. But there's never anybody there. They could never figure out where it was coming from, and the footsteps. She said you'd hear them too. Not soft creaks from an old house settling, but clear, deliberate footsteps pacing from room to room. I have no idea how she got used to it, but apparently she did after a while. I can't explain what my parents encountered. I helped my parents at their business, and recently I was on my way to work with 2 other guys who worked for them. We were sharing creepy paranormal stories and laughing, while my parents sat in the front seat focused on their own conversation. So I asked my mom if she had ever experienced anything paranormal. Before she could answer, my dad chimed in, reminding her of an encounter they had both experienced at their old job. You see, I'm from southern Chile. They used to work at, oh boy, Termas de Puyahue, a popular hot spring resort that had been around since 1910. Termas de... I can't do it. Anyway, I've been there a couple of times, and it's surrounded by deep forest. And it's really beautiful. Y'all should look it up. It's spelled Termasdepuyehue. And it's also where they met. So they told us that one night during their break, they and some be fun to explore it after dark just for the LOLs. It was pitch black, and the only way they could see was with lighters. I think one person had a flashlight. Mind you, this was before they had cell phones, so no quick access to light. As they were walking, a tall man suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He was dressed in formal black clothing, wearing dark sunglasses, literally like a stereotypical cult character. They were all pretty startled and were like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here at night, sir." But the man didn't say shit. He had no source of light on him, yet he walked deeper into the forest and just disappeared. Completely creeped out, they all decided to turn back immediately, and they were just laughing it off. Does somebody have a similar story or theories? I don't know what this could have been. Not it. After 25 years, I was able to confirm my only paranormal experience actually happened. I, a 33-year-old male, am a skeptic when it comes to anything paranormal. I generally don't believe anything related to the paranormal and would find explanations for what may be deemed paranormal, that is. Except for one, which happened to me and my siblings back in 2000. My family, my parents and 2 younger siblings, they live with their grandmother in a 2-story house. Our family lives on the ground floor, whereas my grandmother has the 2nd floor to herself. My parents have a separate room, while my siblings and I share the same room in separate beds. Our bedroom and our parents' bedroom is connected by a shared bathroom. My grandmother usually comes to our room and uses our bathroom to pee. I guess it was to check up on us while our parents weren't home yet. Anyway, one night, our parents took an unusually long time to come home. To pass the time, my siblings and I watched Beauty and the Beast on one of those VHS tapes. And it was our favorite Disney movie back then. We were watching the movie for some time when suddenly, the door to our room spontaneously opened, and a few seconds later, the door to our toilet opened and closed. We heard the flushing sound of the toilet, and this was followed by the opening of the toilet door and the opening of our bedroom door. I remember my siblings and I being in a state of shock, and we huddled together in the corner of the bed just crying. I also remember, distinctly remember, television turned to static. My siblings and I were freaked out the entire time. At that time, my siblings and I were around 9, 8, and 5. So we were fully aware of what was happening. Our parents arrived and saw us crying. I didn't really think anything of it. The next day, my mother took me to the bathroom and told me that my grandmother had passed away. I was certain that I didn't tell them about the events that happened the previous night. And more than 2 decades had passed, and my siblings and I never really discussed it. I conveniently thought of that event as a false memory, since I never really got any confirmation from external sources that whatever happened was real, nor was able to talk about it with my siblings. I lived my life thinking that I never truly had a paranormal experience. Anyway, I'm currently doing a PhD in the United Kingdom. I visited my family back home in the Philippines during the holidays. The entire family was in the car, and we were talking about my grandmother's last birthday celebration. We were part Chinese, and she may have been 70 years old for that birthday, so it was a special celebration, and was thus memorable. We were reminiscing about the event, but then my mother suddenly mentioned, "Do you remember about the day she died and you were crying even though you didn't know your grandmother was dead?" She then went into some detail about the events my siblings and I experienced that night. Apparently, my younger sister told my mother about the night when it was her turn to be told about my grandmother's passing. Freaked me the fuck out. Some local folklore from my home country. Personal experience. I live on an island in the Caribbean. Lived in the suburbs, but had family out in the countryside. So I've had my fair share of scary stories. But this was an encounter which I never forgot until today after 13 years. So there's this local legend of childlike creatures that live in the forests and kidnap children. They look like little children from a distance, but their most distinct feature is that their legs face opposite to their bodies. Their footprints always appear as if they walk away from anywhere. So unsuspecting victims follow them, thinking that they were a missing child only to end up lost themselves. Good thing is they only show up at around dusk, so usually at our curfew. When I was 7, I went to visit my cousins who lived out in the countryside to spend the night by them. I never believed in the paranormal back then, nor do I believe in it now. I love science and technology. But from what I saw, not something science could explain. My cousins, one older, one my age and 2 younger than me, really enjoy playing outside. Me, I like video games and would hide away with my Nintendo DS if given the chance. But this time, however, there was another girl joining us who I liked, so I went outside to play with her. She was older than me by about 3 years, so she was like way cooler than my cousins. We played hide and seek, then catch and rescue. It's like a game similar to Cops and Robbers, but without the titles. That was until about 5:30 p.m. That's when the sun was setting. The yard we played in was big and had lots of places to hide, plus an old shed where my great-uncle used to live before he moved in with my grandmother when he became an amputee. Past that shed was a large forest where my dad and his family used to go hunting, and when he was in his teens. I remembered my uncle told us to never go near the forest when it gets dark. Else we got lost and ended up missing. And that's when my older cousin and the older girl tried to scare me by telling me the story of the creatures known as Dwen. Like my description said, they're childlike in appearance, but are actually spirits of dead children who weren't baptized and would take naughty children away to never be seen again. I didn't believe them, I just said those were just stories and ghosts and stuff like that wasn't real. When my uncle called us back inside on the way, I saw I guess you could say a short figure near the edge of the forest. I called out to them thinking it was one of my younger cousins. No one answered. I called again and again, but the figure didn't answer. Hearing my uncle still calling us, I walked by thinking they would just follow me to the house. I heard footsteps behind me, so I assumed that was my cousin. When I got closer to the house, I saw my uncle, the older girl, and all of my cousins. The oldest, the one my age, and the 2 younger cousins. When I turned around, all I saw were footprints about 5 meters behind me leading back to the forest. Everyone saw them too and were reasonably scared, and after that day we stayed inside until my parents came back to pick me up from their house. I told them the story, and my dad said it must have been a Dwen, and that I did really good not turning around or following them into the forest. I asked my older cousin about it some years later. He says it was a spooky experience and that his dad told him that years before he was born, children would go missing in that forest. They could have ended up with those spirits. I don't expect this to get much attention, but oh well. My childhood attachment. You may have seen my boyfriend's story about the mushroom tunnels, but I have my own unique story. It all started when I was about 9 years old. At the time, I attended a small Christian school with fewer than 100 students across 10-year levels. For our annual school camp, years 4 through 6 went to Barry Sport and Recreation Center for 2 nights. I was excited but nervous. This was 4 hours from home. I'd never been away from my mom without an older relative. Thankfully, my sister, just a year older than me, was also attending. When we arrived and unpacked, I felt an unfamiliar sensation in my chest. After lunch, we socialized with students from other schools, and that evening after dinner at the night games, we returned to our cabins, which were more secluded than the other students' accommodations. All the girls in my cabin talked about how the place felt eerie. When the lights went out, I saw a tall shadow in the doorway. Terrified, I moved to another girl's bed in the next section. I eventually fell asleep until I woke up to a woman's voice calling for Max and Luke, reassuring them it was safe to come home. Barely slept after that. The next night, we left our cabin tidy. That was before heading to the gym for night games. When we returned, everything was trashed. Items thrown around, lights on, nothing as we left it. Suddenly, screams rang out. "Demon, it's a demon," followed by crying. Teachers rushed in to console us, and no one slept that night. On the bus ride home, I was filled with fear and curiosity. What had we encountered? Even weeks later, I felt uneasy. Then small things started happening at home, like a door rattling with no draft or footsteps when no one was awake. And soon it escalated. My family, being believers and skeptics alike, witnessed unexplainable events. We heard children running up and down the stairs, and twice a clock jumped off the wall at my mother. My guitar strummed itself, but the worst part, whatever it was, it focused on me. My bedroom was downstairs near the front door. I heard tapping on my windows, scratching on the walls, footsteps on the gravel outside. That's where no one could have been. Banging on the front door, which would wake me up in the middle of the night, but the sleep paralysis was the worst. I woke up between 3 and 4 a.m. every night, unable to move, often feeling a presence sitting on my bed. One morning I found my door unlocked and wide open, though I hadn't touched it. At 11 we moved, and everything seemed fine at first. But in our new home, strange things continued. My sister's bathroom was connected to my room. I would see one of them enter but never leave. I heard the shower run, but no one was there. When I asked, they said they hadn't even been in the room. After moving again, all activity stopped. Years later, curiosity led me to research Barry's sport and recreation. What I found was shocking. It had once been a home for misbehaved boys where they had been beaten, some possibly to death. In my cabin, it had been the punishment room. Others who visited reported similar terrifying experiences. I still wonder why I formed an attachment and what it wanted from me, but it explains my lifelong fascination with the paranormal. Needing advice, please. Since I was a kid, I've always seemed to have a strong connection to spirits. I think that's what it's called. Where I've always seen them, like my first encounters when I was literally 5 and seeing the spirit of another child, or when I was a teenager, having moved to a different house. I'd seemed to be the main one the spirit in the house messed with. And I'm honestly starting to think the spirit from my teen years may have followed me. I'll explain. Also, I apologize if all of this gets kind of rambly, because there's a lot. So to start, when I was a teen, I lived in a haunted house. The kitchen was always freezing. Doors would open and close on their own. Footsteps heard going down the stairs. And it was just me, my mom, and my dog at this house, by the way. And the spirit seemed attached to me. I'd always feel like I was being watched. Like closet, or as they put it, my closest, gonna presume closet, would open and close on its own. I'd wake up with scratches and bite marks on me. And even one time I saw my doorknob move as if someone was trying to come in only for, well, no one to be there. I have seen the spirit, one which was a little girl and the other a tall shadowy figure, and would always see the shadow out of the corner of my eye. Things got so bad there that I'm physically scared to sleep in this complete darkness. I felt like I was being touched, like someone raking their hands through my hair, pulling my hair, and something like throw a desk fan at me when it was just me in the room. And on one occasion, that's made my mom start believing the house was haunted, was the glass door leading to her basement from the outside shattered, and nothing had been caught in the backyard camera that could explain how it just shattered. My mom ended up having enough space that we would come back from the grocery shopping to see all the lights in our house with something standing in the attic just for them to immediately go off. Now, for where I need advice, it's been years since I experienced all of that. I'm an adult now, still living with my parents, but we live far from the house now, but I still feel the same presence as I did in the house in this one. I feel like I'm being watched in my room, waking up with scratches, specifically on my neck and chest. My hats end up in the middle of the floor, hearing footsteps in my room, taps coming from the inside of my closet. My parents and my own voice coming from the living room when no one's there, and as of recently,